Welcome to Off the Shelf, where we take you on the most spectacular adventures, talk about salacious romances, dive deep into the latest true crime, and break down the most anticipated memoirs.
Hey y'all, I'm Carrie Martin Lashney. I'm an actress and producer, and most of you might know me from a little Netflix series called Hintified, where I played Ana Morales. But what you might not know about me is I love books. Like, I'm obsessed with books. Why not? I'm a storyteller by trade, but my publicist, Nicole Miller Diaz, and I partner as well, started the Bookshelf Book Club, and Off the Shelf is our very own virtual chat off branch of our club. Today, we are so excited to welcome Maddie McGee from What Maddie Reads. And Maddie, we were talking about this earlier. We're such fans of your aesthetic, of how you lay out your page, how you review, everything you provide to your audience in regards to book detailing. And it could be so small, like a sentence, or incredibly long regarding your reviews and, specifics on each book. But briefly tell us how you started your book club.
Yeah, hi. So excited to be here. I started my account in October 2019. I had just graduated from college. I was feeling kind of lost in the career space. For a while, I thought I wanted to go to law school. And then I kind of took a deep breath and thought about it. And I was like, I want something a little bit more creative. I have loved to read for my entire life. My mom and both my grandmas really created this huge love of reading for me. And so my entire life, from probably age 2 to present day, I have constantly had a book with me. Like, I'm the type of person who will have my Kindle in my purse, like at a bar, just in case I need to get like a couple pages in. So it was October 2019. I had been kind of passively following these Instagram accounts where people were posting about books. And I kind of been thinking, hey, I want to do my own, but I wasn't quite sure about how I would fit into that space. I wanted to do something unique and kind of stand out. I was not very good at photography. And so I was trying to find a way where I could make posts that I was proud of with kind of what I would call my limited skill set at the time. And so I started it. I wanted it to kind of be a portfolio as I started to transition into more of a creative space in the book and media world. And so October 2019, I did a bunch of nonfiction posts. I did, like, because of Nonfiction November, that's like one of my favorite times on Instagram to talk about like memoirs and like absolutely random pop culture books and stuff like that. So I did a couple posts like that, and I was like, hey, I actually like really love this. And then basically ever since then, I've posted almost every single day. I really treat it almost like a business, and it's probably one of my favorite things I've ever done for myself. I think it's opened up a lot of doors for me.
You read so much. Sometimes I'm like, oh my God, like I need to like catch up to this. And you give reviews so quickly and they're so thorough. Let's also add to the fact that what probably attracted Nicole and I so quickly to your work were your doodles when you review specific books. And I know you don't do them for all of them. Like, they are first of all, what is like your reasoning for certain books?
Yeah, so the doodles take a really long time. I kind of perfected that. I started doing the doodle posts as I do them now in 2021. The first book I ever doodled was 7 Days in June by Tia Williams, because I loved that book so much and I had so much to say about it that every single review I tried to do was hitting the Instagram like character limit. And I was like, I want to say so much about this book. And so I had an iPad and an Apple Pencil, and I kind of done a couple posts where I had drawn on them and handwritten things, but nothing to the level I had done for that post. And so I took out my Apple Pencil and I just started writing, and I filled up the whole entire picture with just like gushing about how much I love the book. And then I posted it, and I don't really play into like the whole Instagram numbers game, but I immediately noticed that that was one of my most successful posts I had ever done. So kind of got the wheels turning. I was like, I feel like I should do a lot more of these. And so I've kind of perfected it where you do them for really buzzy books. I do them a lot for books that are a Reese's book club pick, a Jenna book club pick, GMA, Oprah, because then you can tag them in it. And then sometimes they've been reshared by those accounts. So you kind of got to have like a little bit of business savvy when you do them, because they take so long that I want there to be like at least a little bit of reward for it. And so I will only do them if I have a ton to say about the book too. I have a lot of 5-star books that I loved, but if I don't have something to say that I know can fill that up, then I won't doodle them. I'll just write a very long, gushing review in the caption instead.
I love that. I love that so much. That is so smart. I mean, obviously, like we had said earlier, we're such a new book club and we're just now trying, figuring out our stride, what we like, what we don't like, how much do we post, how little do we post, what will kind of, like you said, differentiate us from other book clubs. But I love like the business savviness of that, but also it really does stand out when you do it for a specific book, because then I know myself, I'm like, oh my God, what did she say? What is she reviewing? I need to pick that book up as well, which a doodle you did, which is a book we're here to talk about today. We're taking Spare by Prince Harry off the shelf today. You did a very detailed doodle on Spare. And what is your take? I'm just going to go right into it. What is your take on the concept of heir versus spare?
Yeah, so I have always kind of been a Royals watcher. And so when I first heard of Spare, I was like immediately hit pre-order. I knew I wanted to read it. And I had kind of a feeling that I was going to doodle it from the get-go because I knew that that was going to make a massive splash on Instagram. And so when I had read the book, I was also reading it for work. I used to work at BuzzFeed, and so I covered a lot of celebrity memoirs in that space. And so I knew I'd be covering it for work. And so I had extensive notes on the book. I had 40 pages of notes in a Google Doc for my articles that I was doing. And so I was like, I have so much to say about this book. I was like, I have to doodle it. And I feel like it would have started a pretty interesting conversation because I know that they're very controversial, even though I don't necessarily think they should be controversial at all. But so the concept of heir versus spare, as someone who has been someone who likes the royal family and knows a fair amount about them, I kind of was familiar with it, but I think that the book really emphasized the way that Harry's entire life was built on this concept. And so like, I can't imagine the weight on your shoulders of knowing that you are constantly second place in your life. I mean, William was put on a pedestal. He could do no wrong. And then there's Harry, and basically he's equally as scrutinized and he'll never get the same reward that William has. Whether you think being a royal is a reward or a curse, I honestly, from reading Harry's book, do think it is a curse. And so I think that he was really smart in anchoring the book in this heir versus spare concept, even from just like a literary standpoint, because I think it made him feel so much more relatable. Everybody has had a time in their life where they feel second. And so I think that him anchoring it in that made someone who is maybe one of the most unrelatable people in the world as a royal, everyone could kind of find something to gravitate towards in that narrative.
I completely agree with that. And I think which they had talked about, right, in like several interviews, before he and his brother had started that organization for mental health. But I feel like this book really captured his honesty about the effects that all of this had on him. And it really paralleled his mom, Princess Diana's life. Do you think that the fact that it was so ingrained in him that he might be needed, but not, you know what I mean? It was always kind of like, you might be needed to like hold on, but you can't fly with your brother, you can't fly with your brother, or, things like that. Do you think that added to his mental health struggle?
I mean, 100%. This whole ingrained heir versus spare thing exacerbated his mental health struggles tenfold. I can't imagine constantly having that pressure. I mean, there are times in the book where he talks about how he just wishes he could have been a kid, or even when he talks about his time in the military and he wanted to be in the military and be just like every other soldier, and he still had limits because, hey, if you get killed in action, what is the royal family going to do? And so I think that every he was born into a world where every move you make is so calculated, and he really obviously did not want to be a part of that at all. And so I think that when you're stuck in a situation where you have no control, that's definitely going to make your mental health suffer as a result.
Absolutely. Yeah. I did that portion of the book with him being in the military. I found so interesting because it almost, and he might have even used this phrase, right? I'm going to paraphrase, but there was almost like a freedom to it for him. Like he felt just like, I'm doing this for me. And, you know, like I want to make the world a better place, not I'm making the world a better place because I'm a royal. So I definitely found that incredibly interesting. Do you have an opinion on, or like a thought on how the upper royals pushed lies about Harry in his younger years into the media for their own gain?
Oh, I mean, how awful to have your father and his new wife planning stories about you, like smoking weed or drinking or hanging out with girls, and you're 14 years old, you're in high school. It's like your formative years. It's your time to experiment. It's your time to figure out who you are. And every move you make that's not by the book to the royals ends up in the papers to block some other story that honestly probably wouldn't have even harmed Charles or Camilla in any way. I mean, I can't imagine to live life under that scrutiny. And I think I also watched Harry and Meghan's documentary on
Yeah.
Netflix, and
Mhm.
I think that they really illustrated the way that the press has honestly ruined their lives. And to me, I have worked in media, and so I think it's really interesting. I mean, I've never worked at a place that's like the paparazzi or planning stories or anything like that, but I think it's really fascinating to see the way that they have some papers in the British media just like completely under their control, where they can plant anything
Yeah.
and they'll just run with it, even if it's completely baseless and false. It's wild to me. I don't think that could happen here in America to that extent, but
I thought the exact same thing. I'm like, can you imagine a celebrity having, you know, fallacies posted about them? They're like suing and in court the next day. You know what I mean? So like and then the fact that he couldn't defend himself. Like he would go to, you know, they each had their own little aides. He would go to his aide and be like, I need to speak up on this. And they would say, no, it's fine, it'll pass. But I'm like, but that's like your who you are, you know, being falsified to the media, because until the documentary, until the book came out, you know, and as he grew, obviously things changed. But I remember being younger and reading things about Harry and it being he's partying, he's on to his like 10th girlfriend, you know, he's the crazy royal. And you were like, oh my God, right? But now that I'm on this other side, you know, with the work that I do, and you know, you understand with the work that you do, I'm like, this is so crazy to me. Like it made no sense. And I'm like, how could this happen? Um, with that said, because obviously we went straight into it, is there a part of the book that you absolutely loved and why?
I actually think there's not like one specific moment in the book that I was like, that's my favorite part. But I loved all the little details about
Yeah.
the royal family throughout that almost kind of humanized them. I mean, they're obviously humans, but I don't think of them like that. I mean, they're like a well-oiled machine, the way they run. Everything they do is really calculated and it has a purpose. And so to hear Harry write things like, oh, I shop at J. Crew, or I went to TJ Maxx and bought this pair of pants that I met Meghan Markle in. I'm like, I shop at J. Crew and TJ Maxx. Like, we're the same. And so I loved all those little details. And like, that's really, I kind of knew the story he was trying to tell from the documentary and just like everything I've known about them. But like, those little tiny details really kept me super engaged in the book the whole time.
I agree. I even think him um like it becoming more of a fact, right? Like we watch The Crown or things like that, and it's like, oh no, this is an exaggeration, you know, of what is actually happening. But details of him even talking about the adult dinners and them having to be upstairs with their like governess, you know, stuff like that. I was like, oh my gosh, that's him saying it made it so real to me as well. And I was just like, oh my God, that is fact. Like that's not just something that you watch on, you know, these archaic royal shows that are just supposedly made up. So, but I agree. I think this whole entire book fully humanized him. I like was rooting for him so much. There were moments I will say where I feel like, and I don't know what your opinion is. I feel like obviously the book is called Spare, but I felt like he, I mean, I guess who wouldn't, right? But I felt like he took that word so to heart. You know what I mean? It's just like, when do you let that go? Did he let that go, right? Like breaking from, you know, the royals and, you know, removing himself from that situation. Did he let that go? Can he let that go? Is that always going to be a part of his identity? Um, and I don't know. I don't know. And those are kind of things of like, are you going to write another book now that you're out? You know, now that you
Yeah.
have
I
some
feel like,
freedom?
yeah, I feel like he definitely let his identity as a royal define him. And I think he will carry that for the rest of his life, regardless if he wants to or not. I mean, he will never be mentioned in the press as Harry. I don't even know what last name he's using right now because
Yeah.
I think it's Wales, but I don't know if he's using that. Like, he's just forever ingrained in the royal family. And I think there are two like branches he can take with that. He can either do kind of what he's doing now and renounce that he was a part of it, but also like you can tell in the book that he still loves his family and he feels very betrayed by them. And I think that maybe he continues to talk about it in hopes of having them see the light someday and be like, hey, we did you really dirty and we're so sorry. And I don't know if that will ever happen for him. I hope it does. It doesn't seem super promising. Or,
Yeah.
I mean, he could just break free of it. I know that he's trying, like, he has like his Spotify stuff, he has his Netflix documentary, things like
Mhm.
that. And it's almost like I'm waiting to see what the first thing he does that doesn't have that royal identity tied to it to see exactly how he's going to break free of it.
Right. Because even recently, I mean, rightly so, they had said that his children are going to take their royal titles. And I'm sure,
Mhm.
you know, it's for protection of his family, which he has every right to. So it's always like he will always have that tie, right? Like you said, he's not anything other than Prince Harry. Like I'm sure to his wife, he's Harry and to maybe some close friends, but to the world, it's like, how do you write a history book of this situation? You know what I mean? Like, what
Yeah.
is going to happen with that? Um, do I mean, I guess with that said, what is your takeaway after reading such a heavy perspective of his life, like, you know, to what the public sees was seemingly perfect? What is that? I don't know. I guess like what is your opinion on it as a whole, maybe? Like what's your takeaway to that, to his perspective of his story?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it really does. I'm sure there were people who are like Harry and William have this perfect life, even though they from a very young age went through
Mm-hmm.
a huge trauma and having their mother die. And so you would think that they carry some baggage from it, but on the surface, they look like they had an incredible life. And then to show deep down, they fight like a normal family, even though they're not fighting about things that everyone else's family is fighting about. It's not like I'm planning stories like about my mom in the press or anything like that. But it's like, it's very revealing of the way that every celebrity or public figure is a human. And
Mm,
I have read my fair share of celebrity public figure memoirs, and almost all of them have this element of hardship in them that I think helps you feel almost like you can relate to a celebrity more, even though they live a life that is so vastly different than my own. I read celebrity memoirs about like addiction and family issues and eating disorders, and I know people in every walk of my life who can relate to those. And so I do think that it really does work to humanize these public figures that we see as like these golden people, and they're not, they're just people.
yeah, I couldn't agree with you more on that. He did just, you know, like we were saying, will I call him Harry? No, because I don't know him like that.
Yeah.
But he all of a sudden became someone who I felt someday we would feel comfortable calling just Harry, because he
Mhm.
really did just become incredibly relatable. Um, do their archaic values, like the monarchy as a whole, astonish you?
Yes. I mean, they've been playing from the same rule book since like the dawn of time. Like since the royal family was established, they're doing the same like backstabbing. And I mean, it's modernized a little bit like, okay, we're not gonna like backstab you in the town square. We're gonna backstab you in the Daily Mail now. Like
And
that's what it is. And so it just, I mean, they are a family and you can tell they love each other, but it's like you have the most fractured family ever.
and you know, I am Latina, so I mean, like our family traditions and values run deep, but for someone who was born in the US, you know, my family had to acclimate, but also you just have to grow with the time. Like it wasn't just about like, oh, acclimate to your new surroundings, but it's you have to change. There's progress, you know what I mean? And I could not imagine. I remember when I was younger, my dad would, you know, throw like you know, like a no at me because it's, you know, it's no, like you can't be like everybody else. And I'd be like, why? This is crazy. Like you don't live in your like, you know, your country anymore. Like times are different. And I feel like that, you know, us being born and raised here helped my parents like change that perspective. And my dad was so quick to progress with the time and with this the new like culture he was in. But like you said, it really is since the dawn of time. Like I'm like, what, when does this change? Will this change? Like, will this family break from this? Like, can they survive this? Will this dismantle this family? And I don't know. I don't know if they can survive this. I don't know if this will create like the biggest shift we'll ever see in like British monarchy, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I even think that when Meghan Markle married into the royal family, they kind of talk about this, how she wanted to change and how before everything happened with the way the press started to talk about her and change people's perceptions of her, that people were really open to the idea of having a Black person
Yeah.
in the royal family, which I mean, I'm sure when Charles was born, he never thought that would have ever happened. And so to kind of have that, and then you see them slowly dial it all back, any progress they make just gets wiped away because they have such a hard time getting used to it. So I truly don't know if it will ever change. I think that people aren't as trusting of the monarchy anymore. I mean, I don't live in England. I don't know
Right.
exactly people's like day-to-day perceptions of what life is like there. But I do think that the royal family, kind of the curtain has been peeled back. Harry's the first person to really speak so in depth about the way it kind of works and how it's a machine and not a family. And so I think that the more we learn about it, the less people are going to think of it being so picture perfect and kind of understand that, hey, it's not all it's cracked up to be being a royal.
I agree. I agree. And I feel like in the documentary, a lot of Brits, right, more like journalists and stuff like that, spoke on that topic. I remember, I believe it was a Black journalist. He was like, we saw like hope and that progress that we're talking about in the British family when she came into the scene. And it was so exciting because they became exciting again. But it's like the upper royals, and I'm like, you will always be higher up. Like you will be king
Yeah.
and queen. Like these people will not make it there most likely. So I don't know what the fuss is. But they had said, they were like, we were so excited to just see what was perceived as a positive shift in this family and in the dynamic of how they roll. So I don't know. I don't know. What on this like shocking topic, what shocked you most from the book? Because I have shocking moments, but what I want to hear yours first. What shocked you most from the book, or at least
I
kept your attention more than expected?
I think that the most shocking thing to me, I kind of already known this story from watching the documentary, but just like the level of betrayal that that family is okay with. Like, for example, when Harry was like, oh, well, I sent my father this letter that laid out all of the details about me wanting to leave. And then it's in the press like 2 days later, and Harry's like, I know my father planted this story about me, because he was like, that is the only person who that letter was sent to. And just like, how as a father can you betray your son in that way, in this huge national way, and make it a huge spectacle? And I mean, Harry, I give him a lot of credit for being willing to call his father out like that, because I think that the royal family had no idea that he was willing to call them out in that way. So I'm like, props to you, Harry, for that. But that to me, and I like compounding on all the times they had done that to him. But at the end, when they knew that like their relationship is likely beyond repair, and then Charles goes and does that, I would be like, do you even want a relationship with me ever again?
And like, I mean, just like to add on to that point, like another shocker, and I was like, oh my God, like he described this moment like I died with him, you know, when he said that they were walking along that garden and he was going to meet his father and William to talk about like how I can change this but still be a part of it. And it was like they weren't even going to listen to him. Like there was already a plan set in motion, but I'm like why does his happiness affect y'all so much? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I like, it's my, like, I mean, I'm shocked just talking about it now, you know, like out loud, but I've been thinking about that so much. And then how, like, another point, like, as an actress, I cannot imagine this, but how lines in her show started to be shifted to make sure that it didn't offend royal standards. And I was like, are you kidding me?
Yeah. Like, that's crazy to me. Like, the royal family can affect these things that are seemingly so separate and different, and the royal family kind of just like has their like toes in everything. It's wild to me. Like, I can't imagine even like being like a screenwriter, and you get like a message, hey, you have to change all this because the royal family said so. I mean, that seems pretty unprecedented to me. Like, I
Like,
can't imagine.
like you knew before he got into this what she did. Like, it's, I don't know. I think that's kind of, I was telling Nicole earlier, I was like, I think he is at the end of the day just so brave in standing out, right? This is his opinion. So we don't know the other side of the story, or we know as much as we can know and we'll ever know probably. But I think he's so brave to stand out in his truth and the boldness and, just conviction that he used to say, like, enough is enough. I cannot let history repeat itself in my life again. Because you didn't see this happen to Kate and William. Like there were some like chatter here and there, but then it kind of like dissipated. And this just became so scrutinized, like as a whole. And it just became such it was like the headline of everything, what was happening. And I'm like, this should have served as a positive situation. And at the end of the day, y'all literally y'all killed it.
Yeah. I mean, I think even the way that Harry's the only person we've seen treat it this way in the royal family to this extent does kind of go back to the heir versus spare. Like, they protected William and they ensured nothing like this would happen.
Yeah.
And I mean, the way Harry writes about William in the book, you can tell he loves him. You can tell that that's probably the relationship he is forever the most upset about. Because I mean, they were there for each other when their mother died. They were honestly all they really had at some points of their lives while Charles was out with Camilla and everything. And I mean, the way that Harry speaks about how betrayed he feels by William is heartbreaking. I think that's probably the saddest thread of the book. I'm so happy for him and Meghan that they got out, and I totally empathize with their situation, and I don't really see how he can reconcile what happened with William and how they can kind of grow as siblings again. I mean, the way when he talks about how William pushed him and how like he had the scrape on his back from the dog bowl when he got pushed, and like, your brothers, and you let the royal family, the machine of it, control you this far that you guys are strangers to each other now.
It's truly, truly heartbreaking. As the oldest of four siblings, we fight. Obviously, we disagree, of course, but I can't imagine, like our Judy,
Yeah.
becoming a rift in our relationship. Like, I can't even fathom or process that. But I guess what we're left to see now is if they actually make it to the coronation in May, and I am
Yeah.
so there for this.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see how all that plays out. I've been seeing like no celebrity wants to perform for
Yes.
Charles, and I'm like, this is what you deserve. Like, you don't get Harry Styles. You're gonna get like some random that no one's ever heard of because you're obviously not very nice, but
I know. It's crazy. It's crazy. So only time will tell. And I really hope the best for him. And I hope that he can find his peace throughout this, because I cannot imagine having gone through this for so long and feeling so alone. Because I feel like that's another part of mental health, is that, like, in a way you feel so alone, but Harry really was so alone in his struggle, similar to his mother's struggle. It's like nobody's there for you. You have to toughen up, you know what I mean? And just deal with it. And I'm like, I cannot imagine if in my own personal struggles, like, I didn't have a support system with me. You know what I mean? Like, how deep would you fall into that sadness or that despair? And, kind of like what Megan had gone through when they got married and everything. She felt so alone, but she felt comfortable to talk to somebody about it. In spite not
yeah.
necessarily, once again, getting the help that she needed. She felt comfortable enough to at least rely on her husband. And, he had so long where he couldn't rely on anybody. So, but at the end of the day, I'm really so happy for him. I'm happy, like I said, that he spoke his truth, and hope he can find just some closure maybe in this process. But anyway, thank you so much for joining us. Again, such a fan of yours. We're so honored to have you as our first guest to talk about Spare by Prince Harry. So if you haven't read it, go read it right now. As Maddie had said in her doodle, it is the memoir of 2023. And it really was such an awesome read. Audiobook it's like 15 hours plus, but it's still so fantastic. So thank you again, Maddie, for being here with us.
Yeah,
And
of course.
signing off on Off the Shelf.